you today?
I am excited. In fact, I am just so elated that I am doing an interview with you. It's your first interview of the year. So I am excited that I get to be the one to do it. So thank you for accepting to do this with me.
You're special.
It's
You're special.
it's always like I said, I'm excited because it's always I always get to learn. When I hear you talk, you have so much to that you communicate to not just our people but to the world, that is very, very educative. So I'm always elated when I get to talk with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So we are going to go ahead and start. I know we have already wasted some time, so I'm gonna dive straight into it. So Dr. Ayaba, people say you have been doing this for the past 25 plus years, with nothing to show for, and that you are basking in others' successes and taking the glory for others' work. Can you please summarize to us why you chose this path to free the people of Ambazonia, and for how long have you been doing this?
Thank you very much for inviting me to the interview, and Happy New Year to you and your family. And once more, accept on behalf of our people our condolences for the loss of your mom. I know she
Thank you.
was very, very special to you, and you can be rest assured that we all stand with you. And for the incredible work you're doing with children and all the other humanitarian aspect, thank you, and I hope that God gives you the tenacity and strength to carry on. And
Thank you.
to our people, I want to wish everyone a happy Sunday. I know to our people on ground zero, there is nothing really happy on any particular day, but take pride in what we have done as a people up till this moment. I send greetings to our prisoners of war who have been languishing in jail for so many years. You should be rest assured that you are not only going to come home, but you are going to trade spaces with your kidnappers and jailers. And to our brave people, know that your country is there. We must defend and protect it. That's the only place we have. We were born Ambazonians. And as I said yesterday, the very moment some of us were born, we, we came into a situation of occupation. We didn't choose this, it chose us. And so, as citizens of that state that is under this brutal yoke of uh, alien domination and brutality, it's an obligation. And I also think it's an honor to stand up for the freedom of your country, to defend the right of your people to be free, especially the millions of our people who do not have any opportunity. Their only hope, comes from the endeavors that we are putting out here. As far as longevity is concerned, I'm not really basking in the in the hard work and glory of anyone. I think I have made an enormous contribution um, to our struggle. I read a post today, I think, on Facebook, and somebody said nobody really understand the difficulties that pathfinders, have when you watch the wolf moving in snow. The lead wolf is creating a path for the other wolves behind to follow. They don't really understand the difficulties it takes shoveling through snow to create a path for others. Our struggle, our sacrifices has laid the foundation for what is happening here today. And we should never forget history. When the Obamas came in, they took pride in the work of the Martin Luther King Jr. You find in the US Senate today, they are talking about uh, a bill which is named after Mr. Lewis for his contribution in the civil rights movement. And it is only in our own struggle where history only begins with us. That's being selfish. Before I came, there were the Albe Mukong. The foundation of our struggle has been laid by selfless men like Von Gorgi Dinka, and the brave ones who have died, those who have are still there. So I think that my years of service, more than 30 years, has contributed to the nationalism of Ambazonia and has been able to create a foundation upon which this generation is building on. Maybe we will be there when it's all said and done, maybe not, but I'm grateful that I have contributed enormously to the freedom of our homeland.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that brings me to question two. So you have chosen the path to liberate the people of Ambazonia. And you talked about pathfinders. And you have assumed the position of the leader of the Ambazonia War of Independence. Other leaders call themselves president. In fact, two men are claiming to be the president of a yet to exist country called Ambazonia. In a Twitter conference that was talking about, revamping the educational system in Cameroon, organized by the Human Rights Watch, you came in and identified yourself as the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation. So why have you assumed this position, and who gave you the mandate to call yourself the leader of the Ambazonia War of Independence?
I have not assumed any position. It's a role I play. There are two types of leadership in liberation struggles, and I have outlined that in one of my Facebook posts. There are institutional leaders who emerge through agreement by different movements. Those are institutional leaders. There are also functional leaders, leaders who emerge based on what they do. And there is virtually no doubt that my leadership has laid the ideological foundation upon which the resistance is conducted, whether in terms of targeted diplomacy, in terms of internationalization, in terms of the strategy and tactics in self-defense. That's not something anybody can dispute. So it's not simply an assumption; it's a fact, and I happily count that because facts are issues. Facts are issues you don't count. They simply exist. And in a very contested space like ours, you exercise patience and show humility in the way you describe yourself or your role. But I think you find somebody like Nelson Mandela, who was in jail. He did not assume, the role of the face of the South African resistance. He was simply the face by the way he upheld himself, by his sense of defiance and his desire to die for the liberation of his homeland. And that was recognized. It was contested, but there are certain immutable facts which you cannot definitely shelve. And I think it's same with the Amazonian War of liberation. You may call yourself a president. I'm president of the Ambazonian Governing Council. And I think that we have virtually no president in Amazonia. You have presidents of different movements. But as far as, designing the framework for our liberation is concerned, the Ambazonian Governing Council under my leadership has been able to do that. That is not undermining the contribution of, of, of others. Many people have contributed. BBC Mancho laid the foundation for defiance by, basically carrying his coffin and saying, give us independence or give us death.
So, and I totally understand, where you're coming from, but at the same time, you have other, like I said, you have other leaders within this war of liberation that, claim to be the president, and they feel the same way that you feel with regards to, the liberation process and the liberation, where we are heading to. So when we start, calling ourselves presidents, or we let our followers call us, leader of the war of liberation. isn't that conflicting? Doesn't it create the kind of conflict that we see today in our war of liberation?
It does. It does. And see, if you will call yourself president and 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 and, and ascribe to yourself the exclusive power of governance and the deployment of force, and you exercise that role, nobody's going to contest it. If we have a president that mobilizes the resources and arm our people, to defend themselves, you will not contest it. If you have a president that conducts himself or herself at the international level with respect and portraying Ambazonia in a likable way, it will not be contested. If you have a president where you have to build schools and create opportunities for children, it will not be contested. But if you ascribe to yourself, the title of a president, and say you have the exclusive power and right to undertake certain things, and you neither have a strategy for the protection of our people. You neither show how you have been able to move Amazonian diplomacy to a respectable and an acceptable level. You create no opportunities in terms of education, in terms of health and the protection of our people, and then that is subject to contestation. And secondly, president of a nation, especially in situations like Ambazonia, has a specific due process to acquire such a mandate. And I don't think that you can simply just sit in home and say that you are the president of a state.
Right.
No liberation leader has in a functional manner has been elected. Liberation leaders simply eh, assume that role by virtue of what they do, by laying the ideological foundation of that resistance, and by ensuring that they are constantly driving the liberation narrative by being the pathfinders in new ideas, in innovative processes that many people follow. That does not also give you the exclusive right to dictate how things work, and others have their spaces. And it is not something that we simply assume by virtue of whatever. It is a functional role which we play. And I think that the Amazonian Governing Council playing the vanguard role of our liberation struggle has been the movement under my leadership that laid the foundation for our self-defense, targeted diplomacy, internationalization, and has been driving the liberation struggle in a way that bestows respect, hope to the Amazonian people.
Talking about the triad approach, well, I'm going to come to that, but let me finish with this question on leadership. There is a trouble in both IG groups, the IG Care and the IG of SACO. From a leadership perspective, how has this infighting affected the liberation process diplomatically, politically, and also how has it affected the image of our war of liberation?
At present moment, I don't find a big problem within the IGK. I don't think there is any. I think Seseko made the best decision in choosing Comrade Yerima as as a vice, because you need a vice that is going to stand for you, that is not going to be able to challenge your authority. And I think that that's the right person that should serve a leader who is in jail. And I think there is some level of stability within the IGK. They have issues like any other organization, but I think they've attained a level of stability that is important. There are certain reactionary approaches driven by um, the 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 way the IGK is structured. It revolves around their leader's title as president of Ambazonia. And anything that seems to question and undermine that particular perception leads to what we call a lot of reactionary anger. And so Secondly, their leader is in jail and both assumes um, what I call a victimhood title and a functional role as their leader, and that keeps him in a very difficult position. Most liberation leaders who are in jail assume the role of statesmen, they rise above all political organizations and project themselves as statesmen standing for the who are a reflection of the pain and suffering of a people. But when you have a political leader in jail who drives a political agenda of his movement, and then you are going to have that leader will be drawn, will drag himself or herself, into muddy waters that sometimes are problematic. As far as the splinter of the IG is concerned under Dr. Sako, I think I said from the beginning, they have been an agitative structure. They have faced problems on two fronts. One on the issue of legitimacy. Dr. Sako has always tried to project himself as the legitimate leader under Seseko Ayotabe, and that has led to certain policies that has affected cohesion in our struggle. That has also been true on the side of Seseko Ayotabe by driving certain foreign policy approaches that shows him as the legitimate leader of the IG has also dragged us into certain areas that have been very problematic. So the existence of these two formations has been very problematic in our struggle. On the other hand, Dr. Sako has wanted to portray himself to the international community as the main, as the sole representative of the Ambazonian aspiration. That has led them to design policies to attempt to destroy the A Gulf C, destroy the image of the leader of the A Gulf C, and set forces against each other. And so it has created this kind of very, very tense atmosphere that has led to the death of so many people. But this is what I would say, and I have said it from day one, that the IG should be dissolved, and all those who ascribe to themselves the title of president of our country, they must renounce those titles. For a simple reason, it has elevated them to a position where they think they are more superior to others and has made collaboration extremely very difficult. It has been very divisive. It has led to the death of thousands of our people because of the assumption of exclusive right to design policies to prosecute the war, and they have refused to coexist with others. The second issue is the current crisis within Dr. Sako's camp is an opportunity for us Amazonians to pull together. I wish no one evil. I don't scavenge on the demise of others. I think sometimes difficulties provide people with an opportunity to reassess where they are, what they have done. And I have pointed out certain times in our struggle when Seseko proclaimed independence and that led to the killings of our people. I thought it provided an opportunity for us to pull together. When Seseko was kidnapped, I thought that was also an opportunity for us to pull together. The current crisis in the IG should give us an opportunity to rethink, the foundation of, the so-called interim government, dissolve it, establish movements, and enter into frank discussions with other movements so we can work together and make 2022 a defining year for the Amazonian people.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm going to come to the issue of collaboration, but just a follow-up question with regards to the formation of the IG, which I know morphed from it did morphed from Skakov, if I'm not mistaken. And you sit today and you say, it's become problematic, it needs to be dissolved. But what most Amazonians, or maybe some Amazonians, are saying is, the reason why you have a problem with this IG, especially the IG of the IG care that splintered into Sako, in fact, all IG involved, is because you are not the head of the president of the IG. Is that? Can you talk on that? Okay, so for those that are just joining, we are here
Yes.
with Dr. Ayabacho Lucas. That's fine. We are here with Dr. Ayabacho Lucas. This is episode 14 of the interview. So please, we are going to be talking about a whole lot of things, from diplomacy to leadership to defense. So if you're out there watching, please invite others to join us. It's going to be a very, very important session today, as you can see, as we've already started. So over back to you, Dr. Ayabacho Lucas.
You see, there is an assumption, and I think Ambazonians like to dwell in fallacies rather than facts, because fallacies are cheap. They are excuses which can simply win them time, and that those fallacies have not held sway for so many years. And I'll give them a track record. This is my first time of holding leadership position. My first time. 1995, we created the Southern Cameroon's Youth League. I was the only founding member without a position. We had Comrade Bai, who is now in Italy, was the chair. Dr. Akwanga was the spokes. Late Matango Christopher was the public relations officer. Asonganyi Bedifu, I think, was the PR. Now, all through my life as a fighter for the Ambazonian people, I have served all leaders. I served Barrister Kontang Elad as the first chairperson of the SCNC. We moved to his place on a daily basis to hoist the flag. I served Ambassador Henry Fossong. I served Ambassador Epie of SCAM. I served Abed Woma Muko. I am a son who got his blessing also from Fongoji Dinka. I traveled to London, put my head, he laid his hand on it. I went to Washington, went down on my knees, in front of Mullah Litumbe in recognition to his service, his age, and what he has contributed. I and Mullah had fundamental differences. I invited Mullah Litumbe, I invited Dr. For late Chief Ayaba, and all of them to my home in Oslo. I paid personally from pocket Mola Litumbe's flight to come in here. Dr. Ngumia, they came in here for us to establish a foundation for collaboration. And we put Mola Litumbe in front to go back home and push this thing through with our people. There is no evidence in my entire more than 30 years of service that shows that assuming any position is of any relevance to me is a burden. We are not in the 1960s where liberation leaders are running gold mines and are receiving tons of money. I lead the Ambazonian Governing Council, where the provision of the charter makes it absolutely clear the leader receives no dime. So leadership is a burden. It's a liability, So now let me be very specific with the issue of the fact that because I am not those who created the Skakov. I was sitting in my home out here when Barrister Eyambe and I think Patasa were made the two leaders at the initial stage. And I argued. I was on the phone with, I think, Comrade Milan and Derek Yu and others. And I said, listen, my proposition would be to get Barrister Yambe from the consortium, Dr. Mfor from the nationalist movement, or Dr. Akwanga. or vice versa. You get Patasan from the consortium, you get Patasan from the consortium from the Savannah, get Dr. Akwanga from the nationalists from the Atlantic, or get Barrister Eyambe from the consortium from the Atlantic, get Dr. Fo from the Savannah from the nationalists. I didn't put myself in. When Seseko emerged and I met with him, and we have witnesses, he was there. I made it clear to him. The principle we laid down in 1995 was the first leader of our nation must come from the Atlantic. That's a principle we have upheld for as long as this struggle has existed. That's why you had a barrister Elad. You had Ambassador Fosom in Scam. You had Ambassador Epie. You had Chief Ayamba. All have come from the Atlantic. In the SCYL, you had Ebai George from the Atlantic. You have Dr. Akwanga from the Atlantic. No leader has come from, from the Savannah, apart from Gorgie Dinka, who restored, our independence and proclaimed himself as president. Now, what I want to tell Ambazonians is, if you deal in falsehood, if the framework of your analysis is faulty, the prescription of a solution is going to be flawed. And you must be able to uphold the truth of why we have a problem in our struggle, why a group of men could not call the Nigerian police, toss people out of a hall, later proclaim themselves a government, and those who fight for liberation against tyranny can succumb to that kind of illegality. Then you are going nowhere. Principles matter, truth matters, facts matters. And Ambazonia is here today because of flawed foundations, deception, and manipulation. And I think that I will support, and I was prepared to support Siseko. And I told him clearly, let me get Dr. Akwanga, Boheba, and the others. Let us effectively elect you. The reason why it is necessary to elect leaders is because in defining the foundation for election, you lay down clear-cut procedures. Those procedures can be reversed to deselect leaders, to remove leaders. If you just hail and shout and proclaim leaders, when they become tyrants, you will not have any way of bringing them down. That is how, in attempting to replace Dr. Sako, what happened? Another IG was created. In the present contest between Chris Ano and Dr. Sako, what has happened? You find that they have tried to use procedure like impeachment, and they talk about Restoration Council refusing the power of impeachment, and you probably want to dissolve it. So to round up this particular question, I have never been a person for whom power, leadership, position is relevant. It's totally irrelevant. And the facts of my service to the Ambazonian people has proven that whoever could have emerged as our leader if we constituted ourselves well within SCACUF and agreed that we will have one person, I would have stood behind that person. I would have supported that person because the ultimate goal for which we all strive is a freed homeland.
Okay, so I'm going to jump into collaboration because you talked about that a little bit, and you talked about you reaching out to other leaders to coming together and voting Siseko into the leadership room of the IG or SCACO. But we all know that there are more than 5 major liberation movements in the Ambazonia War of Liberation. Most of these movements are always on each other's throat. We know that. The AGOC has been at the center of some of this debacle with accusations of you and your organization refusing to collaborate with other movements. So, Dr. Ayaba, are you holding the liberation process back, by refusing to collaborate with other movements? Is this something you're doing, or is there some story behind all this?
Oh, no, I have taken the liberation process forward. They are the others who came in, and fail to have learned lessons, taken lessons on how you liberated people who've held us back. And listen, I have said I will not accept corrupt practices, whether they are political or financial. And the Ambazonian Governing Council has always showed its willingness to work together with other movements to hasten our day of freedom. Um, we have proposed different models of collaboration that are tested and proven either in other liberation struggles or in some political arrangements. We have what we call a leadership model, and then we have movement models. We have presented these kinds of ideas to others so we can work on them and be very concrete in making compromises that can help us to work together. What we have instead noticed is that collaboration has been hampered by the exclusivity, which my DDC has always described. When you call yourself president, you can never accept to collaborate as equals. That's what has happened. These men need to climb down from these pedestals of seeing themselves as president of our state and see themselves as presidents of their movements, and let's work as equals to hatch out a framework of collaboration that is going to be beneficial to the movements and to the Amazonian people. The IG leadership and the IGs have never accepted, you know, tangible, meaningful collaboration that serves mutual interest and that shows respect for the different movements. I don't want to go into the details of how these things have played out, but the facts of our coexistence and lack of collaboration has been proven by their desire to dominate and to uphold an ideal that they are a government with exclusive powers of governance and leadership. Governments don't collaborate at the level of equality. And unless they renounce, those assumptions, we will still have difficulties.
So, given your extensive background on diplomacy, is it has this formation of a government tampered with the process of diplomacy in the sense that is it going to be or is it has it been difficult for other governments that may have been interested in our movement or in our war of liberation? Is it possible that these governments are shying away because they don't want to be involved with?
No, no, no. We don't have any evidence of that. We don't have. I know it's a typical assumption that, well, maybe when you set up a government, other countries will not deal with you because it is going to be like they are dealing with the government. There is no evidence of that that we have seen that by the mere fact that they set up a government and then it hampered diplomacy. Let me tell you what has hampered diplomacy. Um, One, we have not. It is not the fault of IGs or AGOFC or anyone. They have their fault on the aspect of strategy, which I will factor in. We have not punished Cameroon to the level that gives the international community comfort to believe that we are serious in this endeavor. It is us, the Ambazonian people, not the Swiss, not any so-called IC or the call international community. They have no responsibility at a particular time, to be able to compel a nation state to negotiate itself out of what it claims to be its sovereign territory. It is the afflicted who have an obligation and responsibility through their actions to be able to compel, the occupier to either lose power over its own country or lose the territory that it is occupying and lose power in its own country. We have not pushed La République to that level. We are very close. You find different indexes in terms of, at the level of the international system, the financial, Cameroon's debt, its liquidity and agitations that you're finding in the international relations disaster. They are showing very clearly that we are at a level where Cameroon is going to definitely collapse, or we are pushing Cameroon to a level where its reaction to our actions is giving it a more international pariah status, which is a challenge to international peace of security, respectability of nation states within the international space. But how has the formation of the IG, undermined diplomacy? I explained that before. When they assume exclusive power, they are always in a rush. They are always, you don't push me into anything because the Swiss don't give me guns, the Norwegians don't give me guns. So I I make an assumption when I think Cameroon is ready to talk. And I don't depend on some diplomats to tell us what to do. I know that international diplomats are more concerned with maintaining international peace and security. They are more concerned with the humanitarian situation. They are not concerned with what we want, which is independence. But what has happened in the disaster in our diplomacy has been due to the fact that the international community came in, and these IGs, every one of them, they were competing to be the legitimate, government to speak on behalf of Ambazonia, and they made some monumental mistakes because of that. Is that the fundamental reason why we are here in terms of diplomacy? No, it's a contributing factor. And if they were simply movement, they would have known. They would have known because the foundation of their existence would have been armed resistance, not diplomacy. Any movement that is fighting for independence, the foundation of its existence is armed resistance. Diplomacy is tertiary in its consideration of policy options. But when you are a government, your primary purpose in these considerations is to raise yourself to the level of acceptability at the international level. How you conduct yourself like a president, how you do diplomacy to bring respectability to yourself, to your movement, public relations to show yourself as the legitimate person. And you walk a fine line because you are afraid to use language that may be contrary to international expectations. When you're a liberation leader, you have nothing to lose. You don't need any respect. You need to be feared. When you call yourself president, you want to be respected. I don't want you to respect me. I want when you hear my name, you run away. So all of these things have made it that these guys started running around, creating all sort of fake institutions that create more chaos in our struggle. Instead of focusing your energy in buying guns, in being feared, in being hated. Because if you're a liberation leader where everybody is liking you, sometimes when I go on Facebook and I hear Dr. Ayaba, I'm worried. I'm worried. But when La République say we don't like that guy, I know I'm doing the right thing. When we bring the head of their soldier back to Amba, that is exactly how I want to be seen. Because a liberation leader is a sacrificial lamb. It's not somebody preparing himself for governance. You're preparing yourself for the grave, unmarked grave. So the creation of this stuff has messed up a lot of stuff. But I think I don't want to go so much into history. There are opportunities now for us to work this out, and 2022 end Cameroon's reign in our territory.
Okay, great. And one last question on collaboration before I dive into you talked briefly about diplomacy. So, but there is a document purportedly signed by you, and that document was supposedly put together by Professor Anyangwe. And he smiles. But Prof has totally refused to have, no knowledge of that document. So it is obvious that somebody is lying, with regards to this document. So did you sign any document put together by Prof Anyangwe with the intention to bring the AGOC and the IGK together?
I thought we had adjudicated this issue and should allow it to rest, but sometimes I hate to address issues when the other party is not in a position to respond. Yeah, and one of the foundation of my leadership and my upbringing is the truth. I speak the truth. I don't tell lies. I have never been telling lies. Never. I uphold virtue. Professor Carson Anyangwe, and I think now he sent out a statement. I want to be very brief on this. And is somebody I have known for more than 30 years. Has been somebody whose writings and statements has been the foundation of my own knowledge base. It's Professor Carson Anyangwe and myself, I think 2016, who convened a conference in Boya that brought in the Tasang, the Agbo Balas, and others to see if we could work unity. We convened 2 conferences. It is Professor Carson Anyangwe and myself, I think in 2006, or I can't recall. We worked together for the Oslo and Washington conferences. So we have a long history. I respect him a lot, and he is the one who proposed a model. He said to me clearly, he said, "Look, Cho," he calls me Cho. You and Siseko need to work out something. I said, "Prof, put down something, put a model," and he put a model and sent it to a third party. And my name, President of AGOC, the document is right in front of me. I've shared it with him and he's accepted. This is not to incriminate anyone. It's just so people know sometimes the hard work we have been doing in the background. And I forwarded that to Seseko through third parties. And I don't want to go easy in jail. There are still things I don't want to talk about. Right. But I spoke to Seseko Ebini about it, the leadership model and the other model. The document is very wonderful, wonderful. And the Seseko camp, I want to use my words carefully, okay? And I don't want people to take it out of context. I don't want to be very direct, but I'm going to speak in a nuanced way, and I hope Ambazonians can understand. I know that Seseko's voice is out there, certain things, but I am a liberation leader. I'm a war leader, and so it is different if Seseko speaks to you or to other persons on humanitarian issues than speaking with me. It might bring him into problems. So I'm going to frame my statement in a way that is very, very important. So this document was shared, and I went back 3 times to get an opinion of it. I referred them to consult with Professor Carson Anyangwe and to consult with Seseko Ebini. Anyangwe reached out to me and said he has not been consulted. And I went back to Seseko Ebini and asked if he's been consulted. He said no. So the basis for collaboration, tangible, was established. It needed for the 2 leaders, and I accepted it. It needed for the other parties to accept. It could only have been binding on the Ambazonian Governing Council if it was approved by Cabinet and the National Council. And I don't know their own procedure of making agreements binding on them. But this is where Professor Carson Anyangwe is. He's, let me tell you Professor Carson Anyangwe's dilemma. And it's the dilemma that Tasang was inside. It's the dilemma that Pound was inside. I am of a different era. I'm a radical rebel. Okay? And I am not seen as one of them. It is easy for Anyangwe to rub shoulders with the Seseko than to rub shoulders with me. He would prefer to deal with me in private. And so, even when I was going out for an interview with Professor Kasa Anyangwe, he was worried because he thought it would be a betrayal to his allegiance to the Sesekos. There are a lot of things going on that a statesman, a father of our consciousness, will not recall a fundamental document that he wrote, circulated, and we discussed in weeks. It's not because he forgot. It's not because he was lying. He was afraid of the consequences of public acknowledgement in his relationship with the IGK. That is what you see we all face here. Loyalty to his peers. And let me leave it at that. There was a document. The document is still there. We will not share it out because it was a classified document, and I think that we will look at it in the future.
So with all, thank you so much for that, for answering that question, Dr. Ayaba. So with all this going on, and the issue of collaboration, what is needed for? I mean, I think that we have come a long way in this our war of liberation, and I think that most of Ambazonians, so if not all, are desperately looking for that platform where all the movements can actually sit together and speak from one mouth. So what do you think is needed for a sustainable collaboration that will enable meaningful dialogue?
Movement fatigue. If you study conflict, and you would conflict professionals have always asked, when do parties come to the table? When do parties really come to the table? There is sometimes resistance fatigue. Collaboration is ongoing. We will come together as a people. I'm very optimistic very soon. And I think others will come to the realization that it doesn't serve anyone trying to destroy the other one. It doesn't serve you trying to destroy another movement. I have constantly said, if you want to be recognized, you design a better model that is acceptable. We are now at a point, an opportune moment in our struggle to realize some of the mistakes we made in the past and the cost it has had on our people, on our liberation struggle. I have tenacity. I've been around. I'm a marathonist. I've been around for 30-something years, and I'm just getting started. And I think others are coming to the realization that by continuously trying to claim exclusive power to prosecute this war of independence, you are putting yourself in a position that will make your existence impossible. And I'll give you an example. 1996, the SCNC became what you call the executive organ of the Southern Cameroon's People's Council. Later on, it was seen as the de facto constituent assembly for the Ambazonian people. Subsequent leaders of the SCNC began to claim this exclusive power to dominate all through, even when we fought in exile. I'll give you a short history of myself and Comrade Yerima. Yerima was in the SCNC in Holland. In that same Holland, we had the SCYL. I worked so hard to bring the SCNC and the SCYL together in Holland with him. He too was there. He was always opposing me. Once we set the SCNC and SCYL together, They of the SCNC, because they think they must be over others, they work hard to dismantle that collaboration in order to claim exclusive right. They did. My first trip to Holland in 2016, I was in the hall with Yerima. He never said hello. Never. The mother prayed for me in that hall and said, I don't know why my son is not accepting the name Ambazonia. It's such a beautiful name. He walked away, but it's somebody I have known for 20 years. When he was appointed by Seseko, Professor Carson Anyangwe reached out to me and said, listen, you have to bury history and work together. I said, Prof, I don't have room in my heart for long-term anger. So I will be willing to work with him irrespective of the route. And we began to work together. So no one in this struggle, including the Ambazonian Governing Council and myself, should ever claim or attempt to dominate others. You must treat others with respect and with equality. Leaders are not only those who run armies on the ground. You must not be a leader because you have a defense force. There are leaders who provide ideological foundation for struggles, pathway for struggles. We must recognize also the competence of people. We must recognize the contribution of people. But I think the ultimate reason why collaboration will work this time is because of fatigue. The IG has fatigue. It's unsustainable. It cannot be sustained. And it is reasonable that, and I point Dr. Akwanga here, it's a classical example. We founded the SCYL together. At one time, he became the leader. I was the secretary general. During this struggle, we had a rift. We went our separate ways. The reason why I hardly utter negative statements and bashing people is because I know someday you people will sit together and look at each other in the face. And you will be ashamed of yourself if you spend your entire time trying to rub people in mud and you've gained nothing. But this is what Dr. Akwanga did. Dr. Akwanga realized that if he continued as chairman of the SCYL, if I am a very bad person, I may run a parallel SCYL as secretary general. I may run a parallel SCYL as secretary general just to undermine what he is doing. He was smart like a whip. What he did was to create the APLM. and immediately he took every contestation and factionalization away. That is exactly what I advise my friends of the IGK. Dismantle this stuff called IG, set up a movement, and then leave the people who want to claim to be whosoever to have the singular entity. It is going to reduce the friction and it's going to create the avenues for collaboration. Because just imagine Seseko and Sako wants to collaborate. Who is then the president of Ambazonia?
Absolutely.
But I think, and I have said it, and I say it here, the current crisis in the IG is not for us to rejoice. It's not for us to clap our hands. It's for us to see it as an opportunity for us to be able to have more understanding and build bridges and to be able to deliver for our people, a free homeland.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayaba Lucas. And for those that are just joining us, you are watching episode 14 of the interview, and I am here with Dr. Ayaba Lucas, educating us on so many things on leadership, diplomacy, and we are going to be talking a little bit about defense on ground zero. But back to diplomacy. So the AGOVC used that approach as their strategy of liberation. Diplomacy is part of that approach, but in one of your statements, I think it was sometime earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, you said, you mentioned that diplomacy is dead. So are you telling us that the AGOVC's strategic approach of diplomacy has failed, Or is there something the Ambazonian people need to know with regards to this statement?
Now, let me be frank with the Ambazonian people. There are two ways to end a conflict: negotiated settlement, outright victory. Outright victory. Even in outright victory, there are periods when you would inject an element of negotiated settlement on questions of territorial integrity, borderlines, liabilities and assets, and other stuff. We have an opportunity through our arguments and our resistance to get the international community to understand we are not trying to create a new state. We are defending an old state from alien occupation, domination, and the perpetration of genocide. And if the international community understands that Cameroon violated Article 4 of the African Union Constitutive Act by extending its border into Ambazonia, it will see the need to compel Cameroon to come to the table and negotiate its exit. So the premise of our diplomacy, which was twofold: one, internationalization, which is to create general awareness and create some level of consciousness at the level of citizenry at the international community, and then engineer some form of policy changes, and targeted diplomacy, which was to target policymakers, stakeholders, and to be able to convince them on the necessity to compel Cameroon to negotiate its way out of Amazonia. That has been the premise of our internationalization and targeted diplomatic approach. But behind this strategy, we have been conscious of the stubborn nature of Cameroon, which has believed in the use of force, time, and bribery and corruption. We have been extremely conscious of this because of our long experience in fighting these beasts. So when we engage, or the international community showed interest because of the humanitarian disaster that was unfolding in our land, 4.5 million people affected, hundreds of thousands of our people displaced, and hundreds and hundreds of villages being burned. The international community was more interested in establishing the conditions for peace and the perpetuation of the status quo, that is the maintenance of Cameroon as one with Ambazonia under it. That was the foundation of their interest. And that was also the premise of our resistance in getting involved in premature public relations disaster that would have undermined the spirit of our people. Because if we miscommunicated, if we told our people to depend on diplomacy in the same way John Frundi told us after 11 October 1992, to believe the international community, to believe the Americans in giving him power, we would have failed. Our people would have relaxed. Our people would have believed in us that a negotiated settlement with Cameroon is a possibility. And if that failed and we tried to reignite resistance on the ground, it would have been impossible. It would have been almost like John Frundi, after pacifying the people, tried to reignite the ghost towns and civil disobedience. It collapsed. And so I understood this trend, and I knew it was very important to make our people understand that the armed struggle is the only way. I didn't just dictate it. I explained it based on what I call actor analysis, where you analyze the actors on the other side. Mr. Bia, little fighting for university, he murders people. Mr. Bia, fighting for the GCE board, he murders people. Fighting for democracy, he murders people. Fighting to elect a simple mayor, he murders people. What do you think this kind of a bastard will do if you are fighting to reclaim his chop farm, which is Ambazonia? You think he's going to negotiate? He refused to negotiate with John Frundi. He kidnapped Agbabala and threw into jail. Tried to arrest Tassan escaped.
People who were just fighting to reform the educational system and the legal system. You threw them all in jail. Is this the kind of person that will come and sit on the table without crawling on his knees to negotiate for your own independence? And if we fail to communicate these facts to the Ambazonian people, whom we need to prosecute this war, we would have failed. And I can tell our people that when I said the Ambazonian Governing Council will work hard to bring back respectability to the Ambazonian diplomacy, I got involved. At the beginning of our diplomatic initiatives, it was Secretary of State Dr. Larry Ayaba and the Vice President Dr. Julius Nye and other top State Department and diplomatic officials of the AGOVC that were in diplomacy. I was not involved because I wanted to be laser focused on the armed resistance. At one time, when I saw the mess, I said it was important for me to set the tone, to set the direction, and to be clear with the international community on our passion to fight to the gates of hell to gain our freedom. And I have immersed myself inside, and I have come out, I have told our people that focus on the armed struggle. And I have given 3 reasons. We have not punished Cameroon to the extent where it is about to lose power in Yaoundé and lose the territory of Ambazonia. Even when Cameroon comes to the conclusion that the territory is lost, it will not leave until its economy is collapsing, its power base in Cameroon is under threat. So I have come to the conclusion we have an obligation to put Cameroon to the point where it will either lose Ambazonia and lose power in Yaoundé, or at least lose Ambazonia and keep power in Yaoundé. Number 2, I have spoken with the international community. I have also come to the realization that the timidity of the international system is born out of certain fears. One, the fear of Russian encroachment, that if you attack, if there is a crisis in Central African Republic and the French come in, to at least show some understanding about the resistance, the Russians come in. If there is a crisis in Syria and you people are trying to overthrow Al-Assad, the Russians come in. If there is one in Mali, the French have lost most of their territories within Africa, either to the Russian, Chinese economic and military doctrines. It sees Cameroon as a safe haven. It doesn't want to push hard on Biya because France knows if it pushes hard on Biya and give us the opportunity to push Biya to the wall, Biya will turn to the Russians for rescue. And the French will lose Cameroon. So, these are the things playing against us. Will diplomacy be necessary? Yes. Is it necessary now? It is necessary now, but it is not the pathway to Ambazonian independence at this particular moment. And Ambazonians should allow those who are engaged. At my level, you have our friends of the CDN, you have Effie and the others, and all these other unsung heroes who are doing this stuff to be doing what they are doing. Every one of us, even those doing diplomacy, should buy enough guns, enough bullets, enough bombs to ensure that we cripple Cameroon to the level where it will go down on its knees, crawl across the stadium, come and beg in the same way that the South Africans moved to London and begged Thabo Mbeki that they want to negotiate the end of the apartheid system.
Thank you so much. From what I'm understanding, you're telling Ambazonians to invest 100% on defense. So there is a popular military coup in Mali and Burkina Faso, where the fingerprints of the Russians are visible. I think you know about that. France is on its way out, right? And it looks like Russia may be the better evil. So has your policy team, contemplated, a Russian trajectory?
Switching one colonial power to the other? Now, let me talk on some foreign policy issues which are critical and to set the tone for Ambazonia's foreign policy doctrine. And I talked yesterday when I asked my press secretary if he knows about the Monroe Doctrine. The world is a complex place. Let me give some highlight on what is happening. For example, in Ukraine, I'll link it up to Mali, and then I will now be able to answer your question. Okay. Now, if you see what is happening in Ukraine, where we are talking of a third world war, it is because there are two approaches being used by the West. The economic approach led by the European Union and the military approach led by the United States under NATO. The economic approach is to integrate Ukraine in the European economic free zone, and which the Russians find problematic. The military approach is to encroach into Ukraine, bring Ukraine as a member of NATO, and assign Ukraine the Article 5 obligation, which means if you attack any member of NATO, they invoke Article 5, that they have an obligation to defend that. Don't forget, the east of Ukraine is mostly Russian-speaking people. Mm-hmm. And the fundamental mistake of the West, which ties to 1961, and I'll factor this in, and then factor the present Russian attitude within the continent and in other places, and then how those things shape the Ambazonian foreign policy doctrine. So now, the Monroe Doctrine, which Russia is invoking within its backyard, is a doctrine which the United States has invoked in its own backyard. The Monroe Doctrine simply says America will not tolerate any form of colonialism in the Western Hemisphere. It means it will not tolerate any alien rule in Canada. It will not tolerate alien rule in Cuba. It will not tolerate alien rule in Mexico, because it will be a direct threat to American national security and American sovereignty. And it has maintained that Monroe Doctrine, as we saw in the 50s with the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Russia was moving missiles into Cuba. It led to the Cuban Missile Crisis that would have led into a kind of a nuclear war. And Russia withdrew. America made some concessions elsewhere. So what is happening in Ukraine is Russia invoking the Monroe Doctrine to say Ukraine is a buffer between Russia, Poland, and Germany. Because if you look carefully, you will find Ukraine, and then at the top you find Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, who are all part of NATO. But Ukraine is, you find a scenario where you move from Ukraine, you get into Poland, and then you move into Germany, which is at the center of the European economic expansion. Mm-hmm. So by attempting to put Ukraine into NATO, threatens Russian national security interests in Russia because of the proximity. By attempting to integrate Ukraine into the European Economic Union, threatens Russia also. Russia has proposed what they call a triad approach of getting Russia, the European Union, the IMF, and the World Bank to be able to put monies together to help Ukraine. These things are influencing the attitude of Russia in different places, where Russia has decided, well, since you think you'll be encroaching into my own backyard and threatening my security, I will encroach into your own backyard in Mali, in Central African Republic, in other places, to threaten your own security. It's a game which is going on. How does Ambazonia fit into this? Don't forget, one of the reasons why, we were abandoned or occupied is because we allowed Cameroonians who were supporters of the UPC to get asylum in Ambazonia. UPC was basically supported by Nkwame Nkrumah, who was considered by the capitalist bloc as a pro-Russian figure. And they thought by supporting the UPC and getting thousands and thousands of UPCs getting asylum in Ambazonia, including our own son, late Pan Tumaza, who was an adherent of the UPC, it might, if given independence, change Ambazonia from the capitalist bloc into the socialist bloc. So Ambazonia has to be careful.
Wow. Okay. That
We
gives
yes, we have to be careful.
that gives a whole new perspective on how I was looking at it. But um, I know you're a busy man, and I know that you have other things that you need to attend to. So I'm going to. I have a whole bunch of questions that I want to ask. But hey, I'm going to ask just a few, maybe two or three more. And then for those that are watching, we are also going to provide a number that you can call. I'm going to take about 4 questions from the audience. For those that are watching, if you want to ask Dr. Ayaba Lucas a question, that would
You
be
can
great.
take more. You can take more. I really think that we should, your time permit, provide the Ambazonians the opportunity to ask every question that they have, for me to provide clarity to some of their
Okay,
work.
absolutely. We can. I think I have some time for that. So, with regards to um, what is it called? Negotiation.
Mhm.
We we heard that Sisiku had requested, to have some sort of negotiation with President Paul Biya of Cameroon. And based on what you just, said, um, the government of Cameroon is never gonna, sit down with us, or maybe at, in the nearest future, never gonna sit down with us. So if this request had been accepted and President Paul Biya had accepted to, sit down with Sisiko Ayok as the leadership on Ground Zero, how would this have influenced our war of liberation?
I read the report, but I don't want to react on. I haven't read from the Siseko camp, so I will not be opining on rumors in newspapers. But I will talk from a general perspective.
Okay.
Um, Now, the our primary strategy on Ground Zero was to make sure that we internationalize our struggle, because any attempt at domestic discussions with Cameroon is going to end the Ambazonian struggle. I am not saying this out of assumption. I have laid out here numerous occasions that shows Cameroon as a bad faith actor. There is a clause in the Convention on the Law of Treaties that says um, people adhere to treaties based on good faith. So if you sign a treaty, we are expecting adherence based on good faith, even though sometimes they are enforcement mechanism, but you are just hoping that the other actors would uphold their own side of the bargain in good faith. From 1961 up till today, Cameroon has not shown itself as an actor that can negotiate in good faith and enforce outcomes in good faith. While Mr. Mesmer of France was producing a replica of uh, uh, the constitution of the Fifth French Republic and giving it to Mr. Ayijo to negotiate with Mr. Foncha. Uh, Ayijo was convincing Foncha to deny the presence of the British. Ayijo was dismantling Ambazonian political institutions, having deceived our own political leaders that a unified political structure is going to be for the interest of cohesion and national development. I can move to the 90s, where all attempt to get Yaoundé to negotiate a sovereign national conference, a constitutional conference that could work on the constitution, make amendments, at least even create the environment for coexistence, has failed because of Cameroon's bad faith. I realized when Professor Carson Anyangwe and others drafted the federal draft constitution to submit to Yaoundé, it was totally rejected because the constitutional conference is a constitutional conference on faxes and telephone. You come, you elect mayors to at least take over some level of governance, they appoint government delegates. In rural councils, those are the real mayors, while mayors have virtually no powers. We create
through our blood University of Boya, these guys appointed all CPDM acolytes to take over those places that we created. The Tasang rose up, their Balas rose up, they were kidnapped, thrown into jail, simply for asking for a change of little issues like, getting our people to teach us to speak English in our classrooms and lawyers to practice the common law system within the Ambazonian territory. We rise up to fight. They create fake commissions, bilingualism commission, fake national dialogue, where they brought in their own pseudo representatives to come and speak for us. Professor Carson Anyangwe, Dr. Ngumye, Pa Ndangam, and the others took La République to the African Court of Human and People's Rights 2003. Decision of 2006 asked for political dialogue between the two peoples. Nothing ever happened. La République chose its own set of pseudo leaders and brought them to the table to have discussion. Its objective is to maintain the status quo without discussion, and if possible, use the military to commit genocide to destroy the Amazonian people. That has happened because all these discussions have taken place under the auspices of the Cameroon government. The arsonist and the firefighter at the same time. No negotiation for sovereignty in situations of sovereignty contestation can take place under the auspices of the same state that has, by military force, changed the balance of power and the question and undermine the question of sovereignty. It cannot take place. All negotiations of this takes place under the auspices of third parties who can monitor it, who can ensure enforceability at any time that agreements are reached. And that's why people fight to be able to change the battlefield. When the kite comes down, it picks up a chick, it goes up in a space where it feels comfortable. It knows that on the ground, the mother hen is its own turf. We know that our turf is at the international community. Any attempt to undermine the very effective strategy to change the battlefield from Yaoundé to the international system is going to end the Amazonian resistance. Because the international community believes in the notion of sovereignty. It believes that it can only intervene when the country concerned is incapable or is unwilling. But if Mr. Biya shows willingness to begin to discuss with Seseko in Yaoundé, the international community steps back and says, they have started talking to fix their problem. Biya will buy time, weaken the resistance, and destroy it. So it is, and I say this, I cannot stop anyone from talking to Yaoundé. I don't have that power, okay? I can only educate. I can only appeal. But I also want us to know the following. It is not unprecedented for leaders, high-profile leaders who are in jail, to speak to their oppressors. It is not unprecedented. It is also not unprecedented for those leaders to be criticized. I want people to read Mandela's book, The Long Walk to Freedom. You will see a section where he wrote about the South African government contacting him while in jail. And the leadership of the ANC that was in Zambia was mad. They were not happy. He wrote a very, very nice letter to them. He said, my dear friends and my dear comrades, you know that I will not engage in anything that undermines our solemn objective to free our people. It was so touching. Okay? And so we cannot criminalize Seseko for being spoken to. It's like he's creating something that has not happened. What we are saying, and we must point that out, and I think the IGK also should be able to point that out to its leader, the same way that the leaders of the ANC pointed that out to Nelson Mandela. That, hey, this may undermine, you may be manipulated in jail. It is the responsibility now of the leader in jail to give his assurances to our people that I am here cage. I don't have a choice. If they knock on my door and they say they want to talk, I can't run away. I will just tell them, if you want to talk,
go out there and meet the representatives of our people. And so we will not negotiate with our oppressor, the blood-sucking bastard of our land, on their own turf. We will negotiate in a neutral venue where it will be as set out by the Ambazonian Governing Council, adopted by the Declaration of the Toronto Conference. Multilateral driven talks with credible international parties that can provide both persuasive and coercive power and have the power to be able to compel and to facilitate discussions that will lead to an outcome that ends the encroachment to our territory by Cameroon.
And I am so happy you talked about, the long walk to freedom. I'm glad I've read that, and I can absolutely agree to, that section where the government of South Africa had reached out to Mandela. But so, are you saying that for a proper negotiation process to take place, it has to involve all stakeholders, including, all the movements, all the civil society that are involved in this war?
No. I want to disabuse ourselves of that.
Okay.
It is important to involve all stakeholders. It is very important so that you can represent in the outcome the general aspirations of everyone. You want to get women involved so that you're building systems, that their own interest is factored in. You want to get prisoners of war, to be involved, so that their own interest is factored in. One group powerful enough can begin the process of negotiation, but it cannot end it alone. Okay,
right.
So we should get this right. If Cameroon committed, the SACOs could have moved forward. But Yaoundé knew and still knows that if he makes an agreement with the SACO, it might not be binding on the entire territory of Ambazonia.
Yeah.
Right? And so too is the AGOFC. If we enter into negotiations alone, there might be worries. Do they have the power? We have, and I don't say it from an arrogant perspective. We have not in terms of military. We have in terms of the persuasive power and our policy positions. If we tell Ambazonians that, we have accepted a ceasefire on the condition that La République has withdrawn from the entire state of Momo, Lebialem, and Manyun, Ambazonians will see that somehow reasonable and a victory. Okay, so, but if we come and tell Ambazonians that, there will be a unilateral ceasefire, we will put down our guns and allow the enemy to, to move down into our villages, Ambazonians will see that as an unreasonable position to take. So any group that takes a reasonable position, if, for example, Seseko gets into negotiation, or SACO or whoever gets into negotiation and says, hey, we want to enter into a ceasefire, and La République withdraw from the state of Momo, withdraw from the state of Bui, withdraw from I don't want to put Mezam, it's an urban area where they are also still strong in certain sectors, withdraw from Lebialem and part of Manyun. I will sit down with the AGOFC executive and say, this sounds reasonable, right? And I will ask the party that is engaging in that discussion to, can you provide more clarity on this? If these guys are going to withdraw from this place, we easily hoist our flag, claim that place. That is something which is enthusiastic, will be enthusiastic to our people. And there are certain things we will support even if we are not part of the discussion. But if you are going to come in and say you're going to do unilateral ceasefire, before you finish, I am on the air and making it absolutely clear, in the case of genocide, we aren't laying our guns, and if I had more money, I'm doubling the amount of guns.
Talking about more money and doubling the amount of guns, and moving to defense. So you
that's my tough. That's my tough.
So in your New Year's write-up, you talked about, if Ambazonians can raise, 400 million to train 400 special commandos that will implement the 2022 Liberation Project. And correct me if I am wrong, you're looking at this 2022 Liberation Project to be feasible by August of this 2022, right?
Yes.
Can you please tell us how how do you plan to make that happen? Because we have already been in this war of of independence for the past 5 years. We have been struggling just to get some of these guns or whatever you talk about with regards to
Call
defense,
it guns,
and then
not whatever. It's guns. Guns is guns.
you want to do this in this short period of time. So tell us how you're going to accomplish this goal.
Now, before you design policy, you gather a lot of data, and then you do analysis, and you try to understand where you are and see where you can be in the next few months and what you will need to be able to cover that distance and to be where you want to be. And you also analyze, your opponent. And then you take all of these analysis and factor it into kind of a strategy that you're developing. And that's what we did in the Ambazonian Government Council. We analyzed Cameroon. We saw that they are weakened. We saw that there's lack of leadership because Mr. Biya is a living corpse. We saw that there is a power struggle between the Ngo axis and what do they call this criminal of territorial administration, Atanga. We talked about lack of collaboration as having direct impact on effectiveness and progress, right? On the Ambazonian side. And it's true too in the Cameroon side. There are people who think that it's important to enter into discussion with us. There are those who are beneficiaries of the war, like Atanga, and others who think bloodletting is the only way that will keep them in power. So we see friction within Cameroon. We look at the fact that Cameroon is really struggling with issues of money in doing a lot of things. And we ask ourselves if it is possible for them also to continue to prosecute an expensive war as we've been killing and vaporizing their armor cars and putting more debt. We also look at their credit score, which was also based on the opportunities that they had in Ambazonia. Touting CDC and other parastatals, we discovered that their credit score does not give them an endless possibility for getting monies through bilateral or multilateral institutions. And then we also look at the fact that at this particular stage, it's easy to find mothers wailing, crying about the death of their kids in Ambazonia. All of those things make it impossible for a country to fight a war. Mm-hmm. As we saw in America with the Vietnam War. Once Americans' body bags begin to come into the United States and people start asking, how much is this war going to cost us? And then you discover that the absence of cohesion within a particular state makes it difficult for long-term prosecution of wars that probably are not even necessary. And so that is where Cameroon is. Where are we? We have also analyzed that. We discovered that we have become very effective in prosecuting the war. We have introduced more lethal weapons on the ground. We are well armed, heavy caliber machine gun. We have trucks that can move forces in different places. We have begun to set institutions on the ground like community schools, health centers, vocational training centers that are kind of a reflection of a fledgling nation state that is emerging. And we are seeing the enthusiasm also at the level of the international community. And that's exactly the most interesting part. Recall when I said, once we become a contender, they come to us, we don't go to them. You watched Toronto, right? Mm-hmm. They came to us. I don't even want to get into bilaterals. Yeah. And so we have elevated ourselves to the point where the international community feels comfortable to attend our public conferences, knowing that may anger Cameroon. And this decision to attend these conferences or to have these discussions is born by the reality that they are seeing. There is a possibility that this state is going to exist. That's what they are saying. How can we speed up that day is the basis of the prescription that we looked into. If we, for example, are able to do what all other liberation movements have done, clear the suburbs. Why didn't we clear the suburbs from the beginning? I explained this before. We don't have a godfather behind us. Let's say Nigeria was for us. Biafra was independent and for us. It would have been easy for us to launch an incursion from Biafra land seize territory, knowing that even if we are pushed, we can move into Biafra land without being kidnapped and rendition to Yaoundé, right? So we didn't take territory at that particular moment because we knew our back was not covered. So we adopted a strategy of softening the enemy to the point where we may be able to clear the suburbs and don't need to move into a foreign land if they push us, because we'll have enough strength, enough support from the population to be able to, if we are defeated in one small block, to move into another block and fight them back. So we've come to the conclusion that if we raise enough men in these suburbs who will clear La Republique from these suburbs, it's easy for us to clear La Republique from Bui, clear them from Momo, clear them from Lebialem, part of Manyu, move even into the Ndian area. It is very easy to clear them and relocate them in urban areas like Bamenda or like Boya, leave them to, to rot in Victoria. But what do you do when you clear them from there? Remember, our strategy also was to increase the cost of the occupation, which means we adopted dynamic control as opposed to static control. Because in dynamic control, they continue to run the services of education, social welfare, and whatever. So they incur the cost, but not the benefit. So if you then clear them, you have to take the cost. So you need initial funding to be able to erect health centers. Because if you can't provide those services, the population will see, oh, La Republique did. And if you can't, why should we believe in you? So this budget is going to be able to establish these opportunities for our people, strengthen our men to be able to clear La Republique from the suburb. Once we do that, it's over for Cameroon. Basically over for Cameroon. We can decide to enter the transition phase. At the transition phase, we will be able to establish a legitimate transitional authority with elected leaders that now engage the international system effectively as representative of the Ambazonian people on issues of recognition, diplomacy, and other issues, and begin to build our constitution, begin to think about the kinds of institutions that we are going to have. Why there is an intersection between the liberation and the transition, where we are also still focused in rooting them from the urban area and making sure that they don't re-establish the condition for political legitimacy in the rural area. So it's a well thought out plan. And I really think that if Ambazonians are able to fund this plan, this year is going to be a turning point.
And that is the thing. You are asking for 400 million amber. What is the plan? How do you plan to galvanize Ambazonians to be able to donate this amount so we can be able to, see through with the project?
There are three strategies. Okay. One is basically persuasive, which has been strategies that you adopt at the infancy of a liberation struggle, because you show your willingness to sacrifice and to show your people your dedication. So you persuade them to commit, to donate. And as you move further into the struggle, you now apply what I call persuasive, coercive strategies that compels rather than persuade them to donate. So we are still appealing to our people to commit, but we have also instituted a liberation tax that ensures that all multinational companies that exploit our resources, pay taxes to the genociders, are able to pay liberation tax, to the Ambazonian people, to be able to help us undertake these far-reaching policy changes that we have proposed. We have also realized that 90% of Ambazonians in the diaspora do not commit to the Ambazonian struggle. And maybe 50 or more percent of the Ambazonians are conclave in social, cultural groups and in their alma maters. And that's why we have also imposed a survival levy. As we declared in the Dublin Declaration, Cameroon, Ambazonia is under threat of extinction. And so we need to impose this survival levy on all of these social cultural groups and alma mater of $1,000 that will make sure that they can commit through this levy to this strategic
approach that we've put in place. And there are consequential, as we have said on the liberation tax, that all companies that do not pay their taxes, you know that your officials and will be arrested and your operations will be stopped. So too is the survival levy. Any cultural, social group, alma mater that does not pay their survival levy, make sure your members don't enter the territory. We will take them into custody because we know through our network of intelligence when they go. Because when they go into the territory, they pay La République through visa applications. La République has, I think, increased the visa fees to be able to generate more money to fund the war. And it's very important that, well, to enter our territory, you need to go through La République. And so you need to do that. But you also need to also make an investment to ensure that as you are putting more monies into La République through visa fees, that you are also putting monies into Ambazonia for survival. And we will take this extremely serious.
But isn't this an indirect way of, and I know you know how to, put this thing, but isn't this an indirect way of kidnapping if you are forcing people to pay a survivor levy? Where if I mean we all know that most, well, not most, but some Ambazonians are not in support of our war of liberation, and they
No.
have never contributed financially towards the liberation war. So would that be? I know that a whole lot of people have complained that kidnappings are going on, and as some of these liberation fighters asking for money and so on and so forth. So wouldn't that be another indirect way of kidnapping people and asking for money?
I'm still trying. So if you don't pay your tax, you don't pay your taxes in the United States and you are arrested, so will you charge the US government for kidnapping? You will
Well,
not.
it's a different. I mean, these are two different things, Dr. Ayaba Lucas. We have an established with a constitutional, a country with a constitution, and a yet to,
Yet
constitutionalized
we are
country.
we are a state. Taxation is premised on territorialism. So you control territory, and you're able to develop that territory and provide services to the people, and so you ask them to pay taxes, and so
And
that's the fact.
and
And let me
talking
answer
about,
the other part. Let me answer the
okay,
part on this liberation tax and survival levy instead reduces kidnapping. Apart from the wonderful work that our DDC is doing with our forces on the ground in stopping kidnapping, once you are able to mobilize resources through legal, legitimate means, you are able to provide to the forces, and you're going to, by doing that, you reduce some of the actions necessitated by survival. And some of these forces might do these things as a means of surviving. If you are able to be able to galvanize resources through legal, legitimate processes, which is overseen by them, and then it will spare our people from some of this harassment, and it will also spare our people from opportunists exploiting this perception of ambas and kidnapping to harass our population. These are strategies that established states and peoples fighting for freedom have instituted, not only to generate resources, but as a counter to certain activities. It's almost like marijuana. Marijuana has been illegal, and people have been doing everything in certain countries to get it. Countries began to use different methods. Maybe if we legalize it and impose some taxes, it becomes, we can control consumption, and we can control the kinds of marijuana that is circulating. It's same with different forms of drugs that are banned or they are allowed to be run by men and women of the underworld. The moment it is taken above the surface, and then it is regulated by law, it does not only act to generate funds, it acts as a form of education. People know the consequences of massive consumption of certain products. So our liberation tax is going to play a double role, generate the resources necessary to speed up the termination of the occupation, provide services to our people, and give forces. You cannot allow men and women to be fighting for 5 years. You don't care whether they have kids. You don't care about their own lifestyle. You care nothing about the soldiers. We're only shouting out here, our men, our men. Have we ever thought of removing 15,000 and giving to soldiers per month? 1,000 soldiers, 15,000. How much would that be? Nothing that we can pay, and create the environment to get professional soldiers that can be able to fight with hope and stuff. And why shouldn't we tax people who are doing business in our country and paying taxes to the genocidaires? Why shouldn't we tax people, companies that are exploiting our resources, like our water, our electricity, and marketing them back to us, by paying taxes to the enemy that uses it to buy guns rather than create development and opportunities? Why should we defend the land and others collect the taxes? It makes no sense. It's being naive. I know we have a complex political space, but we should become more mature in the way we conduct ourselves if we want to create a state.
True. Okay. Let me ask my team in the back to please put my number on screen so that we can hopefully in the next 3 or so minutes start taking calls. And Dr. Ayaba, one more question with regards to defense. 80% of, in quotes, as you've stated in some of your speeches, and I think I've heard your peers and the DDC talk about all this. 80% of some territories are under the control of the ADF, including Bui, some areas in Bui, some areas in Momo, and some other areas. However, now I want you to make us to understand, when you talk about 80% control, we still see La Republique admin in some of those areas, right? We still see the administrative, in some of those areas, and we also see fighting and all that going on. I personally would like to understand how you define that when you say 80%, of some territories are under the control of the ADF.
Not only the ADF, including other forces
Okay.
that have been fighting. So my assessment is not based simply on the ADF. It's all the Ambazonian forces on the ground. It's normal practice. It's normal practice. We undertook an operation the other day in Cameroon. Cameroon controls that place, so there was still fighting. So Cameroon has a pocket of resistance in different areas. It has military intelligence bases, forward intelligence bases in different areas in Ambazonia. And it uses armor cars to be able to drive through our own territories, ferrying what you call the administrators into different places. We have effectively reduced Cameroon's presence to military occupation. Political occupation is totally defeated. Political legitimacy is defeated. And their poster boys deals are in bulletproof vests, in armor cars, helicopters. Some are shitting in themselves in those armor cars. As you realize, last month we monitored their top commanders from Bangui. From Bangui to Bamenda should take about 25 minutes. They took 4 hours, stopping at each corner to check if we've buried, an IED, and we still took them out. So we know what happens in those armor cars. Nobody sleeps inside. Everybody is thinking, am I sitting in the right position? So we are in charge. We are in charge. I mean, see, I don't understand why we don't see. You have our forces enter into town and capture a La Republique soldier. We drive trucks like you having on the screen. The other day you saw the buffaloes in Bali driving theirs. You saw no pity with hundreds of men. The other day you saw the ADF. What? There is something about exclusive powers of state. They have the monopoly of power and force, the monopoly of taxation. Ambazonia has made it impossible for La Republique to be the sole power to impose taxes, the deployment of for the having of force in Ambazonia. We have our men who, through their bravery, they were able to attack the forces of the Mountain Lion. Were able to move into our capital. How many
Do you
liberation
want us to take
struggles?
this call?
Yeah, fine.
Do you want us to take this call from ground zero?
That's okay.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, comrade, we can hear you. Are you there? Yes. Okay. Yes, can you hear me?
All right, move to the next.
Yeah, the next just hello. All right, comrade. You are actually live right now, so you want to go ahead and ask your question? Yeah. Good evening.
Yes, I'm there. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Ayaba. Can you hear him?
Yes.
I'm getting you. Good evening to Dr. Ayaba. Good evening to you as well.
Good evening.
Good evening, comrade.
Yeah, please. I have just two questions for Dr. Ayaba.
Come in, sir.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first question is regarding the fundraising, like what we can supplement to the tax issue. We know that we have stopped some production of some areas like the CDC and the rest. Why can't we access those areas, like create some people to like maybe work? Then we can generate money for them to support the fund as well. Can there be a strategy that we can use some of those our resources within ourselves and have some people who can work on it, because we can control it? If you have the power to stop the Republic from working for it, it means you also have the power that we can also generate money from it. So can there be a means that we can also generate money from it? Then the second question is we have been hearing even the outing of Ambassador Chubonagi on this a unified structure, a one voice. I want you to really explain to us how that one voice can come into play because of this faction, and how can we bring all those factions together to have a unified voice, like which has been the cry for all Ambazonia, so that the fighters also can have a break, because they get one instruction from here, one instruction from there. Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
All right, thank
question.
you.
Yeah. Excellent. And a challenging question. It's a challenge to leadership. And he is right. And this is why the first question, and he said something, if you have the power to stop, and then you can have the powers also to create opportunities. The problem with this is when you stop, you don't hold. When you want to create opportunities, you have to hold. Mm-hmm. It means if you want to get workers to work, they have to be stationary. They have to. You put the workers also in danger, because it will show to the enemy that they work for you. So you actually need to control that territory. You need to control that territory, and that this is factor, comrade. I can assure you that we discussed this the other day in different areas, not within not parastatals like the CDC, in different areas with different assets and opportunities. And I asked the generals, what do we need to be able to explore and exploit these assets? And the general said we need to control these places, because once the enemy realizes you are able to generate resources through control, they will fight you a lot, and you need to be prepared. So we are walking a fine line, not to use our people for productive purposes and then they go back home and they are killed or harmed, and not to create scenarios where we create permanent battlefields that we will need to defend but will lack the resources to defend. So these funds that we are trying to mobilize is to create the condition for what you are asking to take place. If you want to employ people, you control that place and defend that place. They work for you, exploit those resources, you generate more funding, and then you are able to amass more wealth and to create more defensive mechanisms. So we are on the line with what you are saying. I would ask you to reach out to Dr. Mambo privately so that we can connect with you because you sound like somebody that knows exactly how these things work. We would like to have more discussions with you to give us more ideas on how we can proceed. The next question is unified structure. It is possible. I can assure you, and I say this with great optimism, there are certain movements. We are a bit worried on what Tibo Nagi is talking about. Unified structure is dangerous 5 years into a war because the regime can easily infiltrate a unified structure and take it over through different means and direct the struggle in the direction that it wants. So we would prefer at this moment to establish the conditions for collaboration, for consultation, to improve positive communication out there, to make sure we can mobilize resources together, we can do diplomacy together, we can show our people that we have the willingness to work together. And as we progress, moving forward in setting up a transitional authority, we must have built the conditions for trust and good faith approaches in dealing with complex issues. So it will happen sometimes, but we should walk carefully because the enemy is at play to inject Trojan horses within our midst.
Okay, great. So you have a lot of calls coming in, especially from ground 1 and ground 0. But you have somebody right now online. Comrade, go ahead.
Okay, this is Comrade Michael Nam. First, I want to appreciate ACN for the wonderful work. And I thank Dr. Ayaba for taking out the time to always listen to the people and answer their questions. Please, my question is, since EGOV-C, ADF, showed us that we have areas which is under our control. Why is it that we are not seeing our flag? Why is it that the Ambazonian flag is not being seen on this area that we call liberated areas? Why our flag's not flying 24 hours? What is the challenges that the flag's not there? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Comrade Nam. CIC, let me take a couple of other calls, maybe like 2 more, and then yes, I think it will go quickly that way. Sorry. Okay, there it goes. Comrade, you're live. Go ahead and ask your question. Hello? Okay, this person is still connecting. I am assuming they have network problems. Okay, another person. Hello, you're live. Go ahead, Comrade. We can hear you. You're live. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. I am taking another call. Hello?
Yes, good evening, Madam.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
All right.
Good evening, CIC.
Good evening, comrade.
Yeah, I'm really
Shake no day.
Shake no day. Go ahead and ask your question, comrade.
Yes, please, I want to ask some pertinent question. I don't know if that will be answered here, but I want to know one thing. We talked about collaboration in Ground Zero, where we saw No Pity and we Unity warriors together. And are you getting me?
We are getting you loud and clear. Is the CIC getting him?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Go ahead, comrade. We can hear you.
Okay. Talking about the Unity, I realize that there are some fighters that goes with no PT and their AGF fighters, and when Ebube happens to have fall, we did not hear him say anything, and it has happened before as well. How is this unity really moving on? Because we don't know exactly why he is not saying anything, whether we are talking about unity. And the second question goes to this. We talked about refugees and displaced persons to other countries, and we talked of Dubai as in Dubai. I think this is the most difficult town I've noticed in maybe somehow countries that I know. And we talked of saying about how those that are in Dubai can be taken to another level for resettlement, or to see how they can bring them up to a certain level to move to other places which are safe. Because I realize so many people in Dubai really wants to support the struggle, but their conditions in Dubai is not the best, and they can't even talk, because this Dubai, when you can find yourself back home at any time.
Okay. Was that so?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Comrade. Dr. Ayaba, let's take one more and then we'll go from there. Yes, Comrade, you're live. We can hear you.
Hey, good evening, Dr. Mambo.
Good evening, sir.
And good evening, Dr. Cho. This is former spokes from the Netherlands, Dr. Cho. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Cho, for coming out. Being explicit to your people. You know, I think you should be doing this much more regularly, please. And I also want to commend you for the wonderful job you are doing. Despite the hot air spewing around about noise, this and that, but LDF, nobody can bet on LDF, that is for sure. So I have one question here, and then maybe a follow-up, Dr. Joe. Yeah. What is I think more important right now equally is this talk of collaboration. I wish to know if your office has reached out to the SACO, ANO, IG for any possibility of collaboration, so that we move this stage forward, because our people are dying. So we get a formidable voice and move forward. And then secondly, maybe this could be out of the normal question. I know, should La République du Cameroon just be chased out of our land today? And we should understand also that all our energy resource, like, electricity come out from the Republic, because we dismantle our own. Should they switch off their lights, and how? Is there any strategy the AGOPC or maybe a collaboration with the other team could come together and then are working on seeing that people should not suffer from electricity for some while? Thank you very much. And then, hey, Happy New Year to your respective family, the doctors.
Thank you so much, sir. Happy New Year to you. All right, CIC, over to you.
All right, thanks. That's my public relation officer, Pro. I'm so glad to hear your voice. Let me start with Comrade Michael Nam. We have our flags flying, Comrade. It's just that, you are not there, so you can't see. And if you want to see permanent symbols of our presence and control, is in our forces. They are there. They are not in the jungle somewhere. They are driving on highways. They are moving on bikes, and that is a sign to show they control large areas of land. To move from Ambazonia to take operations in La République, you pass through so many areas, and that's not controlled by La République. I was just thinking I will get the War Council chairman to immediately get the general to raise a flag and get a video and send so you can see, but nobody seems to be available. So, comrade, what I'm saying about control is not imaginary. You saw during October 1, thousands of our people, including students, including the forces, the population marching. I really want you people to see this thing as tangible, as real. If we are still imaginary, that liberation would be like the Allies marched into Germany with military force and took it over. No, that's not how it's going to come. It comes in bits and pieces. You take, you claim, you own, you progress, you institutionalize so that it becomes permanent. So it has to be real in your head. If it is not real, if it is still fictional, if it is imaginary, it will take a long time to become tangible. See, if there was no buffer between me and Ambazonia, I will be in the territory now. And I will show you people from ground zero what it means to control territory. There are just some complications, and we should know that. And this comes to the point where you hear some people say, oh, the ground zero forces should take over. No, leadership is out here. To lead a liberation struggle is a complex endeavor. All those on the ground who are in a position to do it have either in jail or have escaped into exile. It doesn't mean our great fighters cannot do it. They can. Our country will not be only ruled by intellectuals. General Efang can become president of Ambazonia. Yeah. General Rambo can become president of Ambazonia. Sagat can become. And every Ambazonia, whether educated or not, with sufficient passion and advisors, will be able to make an effective president. So we control territory, and that is a fact, uncontested. But we need to move from the dynamic control to static control, where La Republic cannot penetrate our defenses. In that way, we'll achieve what our first caller asked: if we can stop, why don't we create opportunities from what we have stopped? So thanks, Comrade Michael. And number two, the comrade asks why no PT has not made a statement. I don't really want to get into these nuances. I can't tell if he has not made a statement. I know in the burial of General Bube, you had representatives of the Bui Unity Warriors. Now, this is what I will say. Our forces are taking some baby steps to see that they can work together. And they can share intelligence. They can combine their arsenals to be more effective and more powerful. And we should encourage it, but we should not exploit it. If you people realize, I step back when they are doing these things. I step back and allow them to do it in good faith. And I think if us as leaders, we send our words of encouragement. I spoke to No Pity when they had a very strong problem with Insubu, and I said, listen, I will not want blood to spill, that Insubu has been killed by you people. I don't think it may achieve short-term objective, but it will have a long-term negative impact on us. If you people can find a way to resolve these differences, it will be better through peaceful means. Unless you are attacked, then you can exercise your right to self-defense. What is happening in Bui is an experiment that has happened before. We have done, General Ivo has done the same things before. In Fako, in Bui, in Kupe, Maniguba, in Meme, and different places. People entered into these initiatives, tried to hijack it, to divide it, because they thought it was going to undermine their control. We are seeing it in Bui, where you have leaders, we have spokespersons saying Ground Zero should take over. Their aim is Ground Zero should cut listening from Dr. Ayaba so that they can somehow assume control without effort. And I think that is creating the environment for these collaboration to unravel, because ADF forces are loyal to their chain of command. They are loyal to their chain of command. And the identity of the ADF cannot be extinguished under any collaborative mechanism. So while ADF forces will enter into collaboration, they will still take, command from the leadership, because they are soldiers and they are led politically to achieve political independence. So I think they will improve. No Pity will be talking, and so we should just give them time and monitor and help them to succeed. In terms of refugees in Dubai, my Secretary for Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs has been working on the resettlement program.
we need to study if it's possible to resettle from Dubai. We need to study that, because Dubai might be considered a safe country where that cannot happen. So we need to study it. But there is also a possibility that if our people are threatened in Dubai, we Ambazonians out here can begin to invite them to leave. So, comrade, I would ask you to reach out to send your number to Dr. Mambo, and that number will be provided to the HHS, and we will deal with individual cases. If we cannot remove all, even if we remove one, it will be good for Ambazonia, especially the vulnerable ones. It is possible for Ambazonians out here to issue invitations for people to leave and move out to more safe areas, and it's something that we will explore. Now, on the question of pro, if I have reached out to the Sakos and the Chris Anus, yes, I have. I don't want to go into it more. There are movements on many fronts, and I hope that, as I have said repeatedly, that this moment provides an opportunity for all of us. I reached out also to the consortium. I have asked the consortium that the AGOVC leadership wants a summit with the consortium. I have also asked my vice president to reach out to the IGK for a summit between the AGOVC and the IGK, and there are many more that will be coming. This summit will give us the opportunity to talk and understand each other and look at different models that we can work on to move forward. There are other initiatives that is the post-Toronto perspective that we are working on. And I pray and I ask you Ambazonians to tone down the rhetoric, to be more positive, to see the good in what we have been doing. There are crimes that have been committed. People will be held accountable. But I also think that, as I said, when Putin and Joe Biden sit and shake hands and look at each other in the face, it's not because they are friends. It's because they are looking for their both countries' opportunities for peace, stability, and continuity. But also in the midst of those relationships, people who violate human rights, people who extort money, embezzlement will be held accountable. And on the issue of a sudden collapse of La Republique, that's a tough one. That's the one question I don't really have an answer now. If we'll be able to generate enough energy to light our homes and to drive our economy, that's a tough one, and it's a challenge that I will take into my economic council to see what we can do.
Okay, perfect. So
can we begin to round up soon now?
Do you want to take 3 more questions and we round up?
Okay, 3 more. That's fine.
Okay. Comrade, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, comrade. Hello. Okay, I'm gonna go to somebody else. Ground zero is hello, comrade. We can hear you. Hello. Okay, well, I guess I'm getting confused here with all.
All right, round up. Just ask if you have a last question. Just ask so that I can move out of here.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, comrade.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. So my question to Dr. Ayaba, first, I want to thank him for his resilience and steadfastness. And doctor, I want to ask you, what is the driving force that keeps you moving? Because I know someone like you have suffered a lot from backlashes, being called names and stuff, but you have never given up for no one single day, and you keep focusing on going ahead. What is it so peculiar in you that many Ambazonians need to pick up and move this train ahead? And then secondly, you talked about not having permanent enemies, because I see from your leadership and everything, you are always about forgiving and always extending a hand to whoever calls you or whatever somebody does to you. What is it in you that we need to know? And can you talk more about that and what this is taking you to, so that we can copy and move in this train? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, comrade. Comrade, yeah, go ahead. Please just be very brief with your question.
All right. Good evening, comrade.
Good evening.
Okay. My question is, if we are working on economic sabotage, what is the fight to stop the importation of vehicles from Nigeria, from Benin Republic into Ambazonia through Mamfe or ECOC? Because as of recent, the bees, the military are escorting those vehicles.
All right, I think he went off right there. Comrade, go ahead, ask your question. Last question.
Yeah, good evening. I'm calling from Nigeria. So I want just to congratulate Dr. Cho Ayaba for answering every question, because he has made people excited today for the collaboration question. And so I'm holding him in particular for men. So thank you, Dr. Cho Ayaba.
All right.
Thanks,
Any
my
question
man.
All right. CIC, please go ahead and answer those two questions.
Thank you, comrade. See, one of the things I came to realize is that each time we are against collaboration, no matter what we do, Ambazonians are not happy. Ambazonians have come to the conclusion, even though I disagree with them, that collaboration is necessary for them to be happy. That is something that is in the mindset of the Ambazonians. And I think it is important for us to acknowledge that and work towards that. I will work very hard, extremely very hard, to make sure we achieve a certain level of collaboration, and it's already going on. So you should rather than take one bitter cola, take two. And now on the driving force, can't make me to be happy here. Is it the driving force? I'm a happy man. I remember one day, I'm generally a happy person. Maybe you people know me more when I come on TV and I'm like, I'm gonna eat you raw. But I'm generally, you need to see me at home with my kids. We are running here. When I when I came down from upstairs and I asked my 12-year-old daughter, I said, how do I look? He said, she made a joke. She made a joke how I was dressed up. And we just laughed over it. And my son said, Daddy, go have a jacket. And my daughter, she's an activist. She said, this is how Europeans dress. And they have the audacity to ban the hijab. And I was like, okay. So, okay. My upbringing is responsible for my happiness. I'm a guy that I don't know how to hate. You can attack me for the rest of my life, and I see you, I'm still gonna give you a hug. I don't have space in my heart for hate because it's a burden. It's a burden to me. I have adopted the method of flight rather than that of confrontation on our own people. So rather than confront our own people, I retreat. The only one I fight is the enemy that I've identified. And secondly, I try to understand people's motivation. Why is this person angry with me? Why is Chris Arnold attacking me all the time? I know why. It's a political strategy. You know? Do you think when Chris Arnold talks to me in the background, he's attacking me? No. You think when Dr. Sako talks to me, he's attacking me? No. So why are they attacking me? It's a political strategy. And so I have to put that in context. Is it a nice way to be a human being? No. I want one day for you people to remember me as a good human being. Don't remember me as a good leader. I fought for Ambazonia. I want Ambazonians to remember me as a good human being. That is all. That is enough. And I think that is a motivation for the way I conduct myself. And I also know
things don't last. When you portray yourself as an angry, bitter, abusive, sabotaging, one day it's going to come to an end. And you will meet the person that you really, really hated. And it is you to be ashamed of yourself. So no permanent, don't make permanent enemies, especially within the Ambazonian space. You don't need to. Some of these people, you've just known them in the past 4 years. I have known the chairman of my war council for 25 years. I've known my chief of staff for 19 years. We have quarreled, we have fought, but the fundamentals of our relationship has been good. Even Dr. Akwanga, we've known ourselves in the trenches. So why should I judge somebody only based on the moment we disagree? What about the moments when they were nice? What about the moments when they spoke well of me?